The Hangar Z podcast welcomes retired Coast Guard pilot and now literary aviatrix, Liz Booker.
And then goes, what do you want to do in the Coast Guard? And I said, I want to be a rescue swimmer. I suddenly was like in front leaning rest. And I had like 15 company commanders circling around me, screaming at me, making me do push-ups, explaining to me that, I was going to be alone and afraid in the middle of the ocean at night, in the water.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and partnered with Vertical Valor magazine. In today's episode, we're joined by an incredible guest, Liz Booker, also known as the Literary Aviatrix. Liz's story is one of true grit, service, and inspiration. She dropped out of high school and enlisted into the United States Coast Guard, beginning her journey as a deckhand before moving to become a navigator, and later earning her commission through Officer Candidate School. Liz went on to serve as a Coast Guard pilot flying the H-65 Dolphin and completed an extraordinary 28-year career, retiring at the rank of Commander 06. Along the way, she earned her bachelor's degree and not one, but two master's degrees, one of them from the prestigious Harvard Kennedy School of Government. What began as a hobby, the Aviatrix Book Club, has since grown into a thriving community that celebrates women in aviation and storytelling. Liz's mission to connect, inspire, and empower through literature has resonated across the aviation world. We're thrilled to have Liz with us to share her remarkable journey and the evolution of the Literary Aviatrix project. Thank you to our sponsors, Summit Aviation, Robinson Helicopter Company, and Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Stand by here. Looks like you're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, threw the shotgun, threw something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
It's time for your Heli Life giveaway buzzword. Listen up and remember this word because you'll need it to enter for a chance to win exclusive Heli Life gear. Ready? This episode's buzzword is clearance. Visit contest.verticalhelicasts.com to enter the buzzword.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and partnered with Vertical Valor magazine. I'm your host, Jack Shanley. With me today for these great episodes that you're about to listen to is the creator of the Hangar Z podcast, John Gray. John, good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. We've been anticipating this conversation for good reason. This will be wonderful. And it's very unique because this story is about a journey, and a journey that has some very unusual twists and turns, but one that's very inspirational, motivating, fascinating. I'm excited to hear more because I know some of it, and you know some of it, but we're gonna get more. So our guest today is Liz Booker, also known as the Literary Aviatrix. Liz, welcome to the Hangar Z.
Oh my gosh, Jack and John, thank you so much. I feel honored to be here.
It's our pleasure, Liz. This is going to be wonderful. Let me just give a quick intro for you before I give you your first shot at telling us your story. Liz is a 18-year-old high school dropout that ends up a retired Coast Guard 05 commander after 28 years in the Coast Guard with a bachelor's and two master's degrees. And by the way, she was a pilot during much of that time. I mean, it's incredible. So we have to start this journey at that beginning point, Liz. High school dropout at 18, you made that decision, and then you made the decision to think military and end up Coast Guard. Tell us that beginning.
Well, I'll be honest, that's not a part of my story that I'm particularly proud of, but I do talk about it openly for a couple of reasons. One of which is right now I'm on my third child in 3 decades. He's a teenager, and I'm trying to help him understand how every daily decision he makes, and then how those daily decisions compound to either open or close doors for him. And so I think it's important for him to understand the consequences, even if he can't see it tomorrow, of him not doing his algebra assignment today, how long-term those can build up and kind of close your opportunities down for you. And I also talk about it for people who maybe have gotten themselves into a hole, just so that they know, what, it is possible to get out of it. And so I would say, from my perspective, considering the examples I had in my life, which were 2 parents who came from pretty rough backgrounds themselves, but who dug themselves out of those places. My mom was actually a high school dropout and ended up having a PhD in higher education, and was in academia. My father grew up a second-generation immigrant. His father was a baker. Mom was a home taker. And he got his DDS and was dean of dentistry at the University of Illinois at Chicago. So I grew up with parents who were in academia. My father died when I was young, though, when I was 7. And so that set up some dynamics in my household that were really challenging. And I always knew I wanted to be a pilot. I knew from the time I was 5 years old that I wanted to be a pilot. Somehow, I got the idea I wanted to be an astronaut, and somebody explained to me you had to be a pilot first. So that kind of became my singular focus. And those parents were really supportive of that. And in high school, I was living in Houston near Johnson Space Center with my mom and my new stepfather, and they were really supportive then. I got to go for my first orientation flight when I was 11 years old. We would go to NASA for my birthdays. And then I ended up in a magnet school for aviation, Sterling High School in Houston, Texas, for the first year and a half. And then my mom moved to Southern Georgia in the middle of my 10th grade year. And I went to this new high school in Glenn County. We lived on St. Simon's Island. And I just felt like I didn't fit in. I went from this school where I was, in this heavily STEM-focused curriculum, surrounded by people who were interested in aviation. It was also a school in Texas in which, at the time, they were integrating schools around the city by busing us across town for magnet schools. So I was bringing in the white quota for the school that was near Hobby Airport. And so I was surrounded by the Black community there, so it was just normal for me to be immersed in a community, kind of like a culturally rich community like that. And then I went to Georgia, and everything was different. And so by a combination of mistakes, poor choices, I ended up not being invited to continue coming to school, but not going to get my diploma. I had missed too many days of school. I had been selective about what I wanted to go to school, and it was just mistake after mistake, and that got me into that hole. So I went and got my GED thinking, good to go. Like I passed this test in my sleep, and I did. I did fine on it. But what I didn't realize at the time is that the militaries were, it was the end of the first Gulf War, 1991, and the militaries were drawing down. And so when I turned 18, I had been in that Navy Junior ROTC in that magnet school in Houston. So I felt comfortable and familiar with the Navy. I tried to join the Navy, did really well on my ASVAB. But the recruiter was like, listen, I'm sorry. We'd love to have you after you get, X amount of college credits. And I was like, well, listen, I don't want to go crawling home to mama for money for school. That's why I'm here. And he was like, I don't know what to do. So I went home and I called every other recruiter and was rejected by all of them. And then it was the Navy recruiter who called me back and said, I set you up with an appointment with the Coast Guard recruiter. And I was like, what's the Coast Guard? I had never heard of it.
That's amazing.
And there's another little fun twist to that story, which is that I wrote my mom from boot camp and I told her, hey, I joined the Coast Guard. And she wrote me a letter back and said how proud she was, and that my grandmother, her mother, had been in the spars during World War II, the Women's Coast Guard Reserve, and she had worked at the Galveston Marine Safety Office, and my grandfather went there to register his boat, and that is how they met.
Oh,
and so
wow.
I have a picture of my grandmother in her spar uniform. So there was this family connection, and I didn't even know it.
That's an amazing place to find out about it is
Yeah.
when you're in the
It was
Coast
crazy.
Guard.
It was
That's
crazy.
really cool.
Yeah.
Wow. So much to unpack there. So I understand the reluctance to talk about that, but at the same time, to show, people, lots of people, that you can get out of anything. Your parents, both of them, what amazing examples that was for you. Did you think about that a lot? I mean, as you were going through that, well, my parents succeeded without,
No,
this.
here's what I thought. So education, because that was what my parents did, education was my form of rebellion. I had absolute, because I got to see the back end of it, remember? I mean, education is also a business. And so I had this attitude of, I don't have to pay somebody to validate my intellect. I can learn everything I need to learn from reading, because they did raise me as a reader.
Yeah.
And so I had this chip on my shoulder that lasted a really long time, as you will see as we continue in this conversation. It took me until I was 36 years old and an 04 select in the Coast Guard to get my bachelor's degree. So yeah, no, that's kind of, but there's no denying that having those examples put me ahead of maybe other people who didn't have that as an example in their lives. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, because both of them, that's amazing.
Yeah. In fact, what I read, like a lot of people say, oh, it's so amazing how far you came. But really what's probably more amazing or disappointing is how low I let myself get before I started digging myself out.
Another reason to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to show, hey, you can get to that low without, just the circumstances of life can get you into places where you go, man, I got to dig out of this.
Exactly.
But you dug out of it, Liz.
I did.
In an amazing way.
Thanks.
The NASA part is interesting too. By living so close to that, a natural influence on you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was kind of a coincidence that we moved there, because when my father died in Chicago is where I was growing up, and we moved to Houston to be near my mother's family. It just happened that we were near Johnson, and I was able to go there on the regular. Yeah, it was wonderful. I was already a huge geek and a fan. It just continued to nurture that.
Interesting.
Interest. Yeah.
One thing you talk about that I think is interesting is we go through different times and trials in our life for different reasons, and it's never clear in the moment. When you look back, it's very evident that your goal and what you're doing now is to inspire the next generation of aviators. And you've got a unique ability to do that based on your experiences. You can speak to a whole group of folks that I don't have the legitimacy or the credibilities to speak to, because I didn't live in their shoes, whereas you have. And you've got a really, really cool insight and way to speak to folks that need the motivation and inspiration from someone who's lived a different life or same life that they may find themselves in today. So I think it's really interesting that you went through that, and it gives you a really unique ability to speak to a different group of folks.
Thanks. At least I can do something useful with it.
And thank goodness for that Navy recruiter taking the time to make that call for you.
This is a theme for me. Next week, I'm going to be speaking at the Leading Ladies and Allies of Aerospace and Defense, where I'm going to be talking about owning your power. But, our power doesn't just come from ourselves. It comes from sort of the networks and the people who step into our lives and offer us an opportunity. And that has happened every step of the way for me. And that's why I'd like to be that person for other people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, everybody hears the military recruiting nightmare stories. I mean, everybody talks about that. But I have heard many, many incredible stories about recruiters, including the one that you just told. I mean, that recruiter didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
They just chose to do the extra mile, call over to somebody that they probably talked to before and say, hey, I've got a candidate for you. You guys are taking GEDs. Her ASVAB was great. Very interesting person. I think should be a good fit. Boom. And next thing you know, you're in and it takes you places.
Can I tell you my recruiter horror story? And you
Sure.
can cut it if you want.
No.
So here's how the meeting with the Coast Guard recruiter, when I walked into the office and I saw the helicopter, I saw a picture, there was a picture of the helicopter on the wall. And I knew enough to know that if I was enlisting, I wasn't going to be a pilot. But I saw the guy dangling at the end of the cable underneath the helicopter, and I pointed to the recruiter, and I said, "Can I do that? What's that thing? I want to do that." And he goes, "Yeah, sure, sign here." And so I was like, "Yes, I'm going to go be in a helicopter." And then I got to boot camp, and my company commander, I was the first person, very proud, the first person in my boot camp company to go slap my company commander's wall to spew all this knowledge they made us memorize. And I was a good memorizer, so I just went up there and I was ready to go to get this dumb belt thing that they made us wear until we got it. It's like a belt of shame.
Yeah.
I was going to get this thing off, and I slapped the bulkhead, and I spewed all my stuff, and I was so proud of myself. And then he goes, "What do you want to do in the Coast Guard?" And I said, "I want to be a rescue swimmer." And I suddenly was like in front leaning rest, and I had like 15 company commanders circling around me, screaming at me, making me do push-ups, explaining to me that, I was going to be alone and afraid in the middle of the ocean at night, in the water, and push-ups. And I was just like, okay, I'm good. I mean, I don't need to do that. What else can I do?
Oh, that's great. That's great. Because you got to be a little crazy. I mean, to do that job,
I'm not that. I'm crazy in so many ways, just not that particular
Just not that
one.
way.
I have a lifelong fear of the ocean. So.
Oh, that's funny. And it's funny that you looked at the helicopter and wrote it off and go, "Well, I can't be that."
Yeah.
And then you end up being that.
I know.
mean, it's so cool. Another cool twist. That's so nice. So what were your early impressions of the Coast Guard, either in training or when you got out of training? How did you feel about it? Were you sitting there going, "Oh, did I make a mistake?" Or were you like, "Oh, this is pretty cool. I can run with this"?
Oh, no, I was totally into it. Okay, first of all, I mean, part of the reason I think I dropped out of high school is that I lacked structure and guidance. My mom was kind of like a free bird, like, you're going to figure your own life out kind of thing. I don't know. And it just wasn't working for me. So I knew I needed structure. So no. And then I had loved Navy Junior ROTC. There was just something about the structure of it, the putting the uniform on, the competitiveness of it. So boot camp was fun. I loved it. And then I got sent to a boat that was on, like, if you've ever watched the reality TV series, America's Dirtiest Jobs.
Yeah, with Mike
is
Rowe.
Buoy tender. So they pull buoys out of the water and put them on the deck. And I was stationed in North Carolina. This is my first unit in North Carolina. We would go and pull these buoys out of the water in the blazing sun of summer. And you've got marine life everywhere, and you're like scraping the barnacles off, and there's sea life getting flung everywhere, and it's nasty and smelly. And then it's heavy work too. Like, we would replace the chain because that buoy is held in place by a huge cement anchor at the bottom of the ocean. There's a huge chain. Sometimes you got to replace the chain. So you're like using a welding torch and doing heat and beats and all this crazy, like, serious physical manual labor. And it took me about like a week on that deck. And then, when you're not working buoys, you're scraping paint off the boat. It was this nasty, dirty job. And I looked up at the bridge and I saw the officers, and I was like, okay, what do I have to do? What do I have to do to get that job? I'll do whatever it takes. And so I went to my command and I was like, listen, I'm interested in being an officer. What do I need to do? At some point, interestingly, I got an invitation letter to apply to the Coast Guard Academy because I had, even though I was a high school dropout, I had the high ASVAB scores, and I had decent SAT scores. I had taken the SAT. And so I got this invitation to apply to the academy, and I took that to my executive officer, who was an academy grad. And I said, "Sir, I got this letter." And he goes, "Liz, that place is a prison. You'll get more respect if you stay enlisted and you work your way up and become an officer that way." And I was like, all right, fine.
Wow.
That's what I'll do.
In hindsight, what do you think about that advice?
I was not ready to go to an academy.
Yeah.
I was not ready to do that. So I'm glad I did it the way I did.
Wow. So that was excellent advice from
Yeah,
from
it
that,
worked out well for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the conversation surrounding education. I've always been intrigued by the academies. You know, I've always kind of hoped that my boys would pursue one of the academies. But having said that, I understand that it's a very different experience, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about how it's a great place to be from, not necessarily a great place to be at.
Yeah.
And you know, I having that perspective now, you know, I think it's probably not the best suit for my own kids for a lot of those reasons. But I respect those academies and what skills come out of those academies. Man, it's really impressive.
Yeah, if only they could all have the maturity at that age to understand what they're getting out of it. And some of them do.
Yeah.
That just wasn't me at that age.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready.
So that first 5 years in the Coast Guard, it's called a deckhand or a non-rate. Is that right? Non-rate?
That's how it started. That was the first year, really. And then
Okay.
I went, so as fate would have it, after these decisions were already made that I was going to stay enlisted, I ended up being pregnant and having my first child. And I went to training to become a quartermaster, which is a
Okay.
ship navigator in the Coast
Right.
Guard. And so I spent a year on land going to my primary training, A school is what we call it, to become a ship navigator. Then I went to a group air station just a group. There were no aircraft there. Group Fort Macon, North Carolina, where I helped plan search and rescue. So the radio calls would come in. We would hand plot things back then and do like the mathematical equations to create the search areas for the assets to go and look for vessels in distress and that kind of thing. And then after a year that I got assigned to a Coast Guard cutter out of Boston, the Coast Guard cutter Seneca, that mostly patrolled the Caribbean and the Straits of Florida. So the missions that we did, for anyone who doesn't know, the Coast Guard has 11 statute missions. And while I was enlisted, was primarily involved in fisheries enforcement, obviously aids to navigation on that buoy tender, migrant interdictions, so a lot of Haitian and Cuban migrants, and that topic will come up again, and then counter narcotics interdictions. And so I was a gun-toting law enforcement officer climbing over the gunnels of ships, doing boardings in international waters, looking for narcotics, boarding for migrants to interdict those migrants and make decisions about where they needed to go, in addition to standing watch on the bridge and navigating a ship.
Right. It's funny. I mean, most military jobs are like that, but it seems like in the Coast Guard, there's a lot of variety in a position. Is that
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that accurate?
There's just so many things that you could encounter on the high seas, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting that you got to do all that in the opening years. But the whole time that you were doing that, you still had your eye on the people that were up on that bridge. Now you were on that bridge too as a navigator, as quartermaster.
Yeah.
But you got to be around them, and so you were still going, "Oh yeah, I'm going to be an officer."
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability, so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, in fact, I chose the quartermaster rate, A, because it was close to the officers, and B, because it was a fast moving rate. And I knew that I could advance because the Coast Guard's program, and I think it's still in place, is that you had to be enlisted for 4 years. You had to be an E5, and you had to have 30 college credits, and then you could apply to officer candidate school. And so that's the route I went. And while I was on that land billet, I had like my military training accredited to a certain amount of college credits, and then I got a few when I was on that land billet for a year. I went to the community college and I got as much as I could. So yeah.
Yeah. So you had that minimum that you needed to apply to OCS. But just applying to OCS, you can apply all day. Somebody has to see something in you to back that up. So what do you think it was? I mean, I know you're very humble, but what do you think it was that others saw that said, "Oh yeah, she's applying and she qualifies, but yes, we need to send Liz to OCS"?
Well, first and foremost, I played the game to the best of my ability, which is to tell my ship driving commanding officer who was in charge of me that I wanted to drive a ship just like he did when I grew up, which, was not that true. I mean, I just, in the Coast Guard culture, I'm just going to put this out there. You don't run around telling ship captains that you want to fly helicopters.
Yeah. Yes.
You're not going to get a recommendation. So that was one part of it. But I worked my tail off, and I was motivated at this point. So I may have been motivated by, a little bit of laziness or not wanting to get my hands dirty at first. But once I had a child, now I was motivated by something different. It was, I wanted to be able to have a little more control over the types of assignments that I got. I hoped that going to officer candidate school would give me more land career opportunities and also more pay so that I could support my child. So I was singularly focused really on providing for my child. So
it's a great motivator.
Yeah.
A motivation that John and we can relate to that with different jobs and different, everybody can, in life you get to a point where you go, sometimes you really like what you're doing, but you strive to do something else because of that motivation.
Exactly
so
right.
That's understandable completely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess it just paid off. People recognized it. I didn't get in on my first try. I applied. Yeah. I didn't get in on the first try. I applied a second time. I didn't get accepted. I got put on the alternate list, and then magically somebody dropped off and I got to go. So 5 years later. So, yeah.
Well, you stayed with it.
Yeah.
Where is OCS for the Coast Guard? Back in Cape May or someplace else?
So Coast Guard Boot Camp is in Cape May. Officer Candidate School used to be in Yorktown, Virginia. Yorktown, Virginia, is a training center where we have a lot. That's where I went to Quartermaster A School, went to some other secondary schools, and that's where it used to be. But now it is combined at the Coast Guard Academy in New London, Connecticut.
Oh, okay.
So I went to Yorktown. These days it's in New London.
Okay. What do you remember most about OCS?
I remember most about OCS having being in stiff competition. So the way that OCS classes is that you have a mix of people who are prior enlisted, like I was, so people who have experience in the Coast Guard, and then people from the civilian world who are just coming into the Coast Guard. It's an interesting experience because those of us who have been in the Coast Guard obviously have a leg up, and we take responsibility for helping and nurture the people coming behind us. And what I remember most is having this very stiff competition with a female BM bosun's mate, BM1. Catherine Niles was her name, and she and I were like neck and neck the entire time that we were in OCS. It was a lot of fun. I loved OCS. It was just fun. So, I for some reason I thrive in those competitive, high pressure environments. So I had a great time.
Well, it benefited you later as you got into a very stressful part of the Coast Guard a little bit later. But that's interesting that people were in the same class at OCS and they have not experienced even scraping barnacles. They haven't experienced the Coast Guard life. Yeah. Was looking at them, was that super challenging for them to assimilate, or did you guys just bring them in and take care of them?
Some of them. I mean, we had one guy, Jeff Fry, who he had gone to Rutgers. I don't know if he had done an ROTC program or something, but he just was a natural leader and stood up in front of everybody like he'd been doing it his whole life. And then my girlfriend, Sarah Reed, who, she decided she wanted to join the Coast Guard because she was a surfer and she saw the helicopters flying over the beach in LA and she was like, that'd be a good way to spot the surf. And so she was like a deer in the headlights, and she was a super athlete, like mega athlete. And she was a deer in the headlights. Like I had to hold her hand the whole time, so, and then she did great in the Coast Guard. She had a long career, but it was fun. It was a fun mix of people.
When you come out of OCS in the Coast Guard, what rank are you?
You are an ensign, ensign. Yep.
Okay. An ensign.
01.
And that's the equivalent of, It confuses people. It confuses me at times. About the equivalent of what in the Army or Air Force or Marines, a lieutenant or?
I think it's I can't remember. It goes first lieutenant or second lieutenant, whatever the bottom one is.
Yeah, second.
Yeah, it goes first something lieutenant, then captain. It's ensign, lieutenant, junior grade, lieutenant.
Gotcha.
In the Coast
Guard.
It
would be lieutenant,
in the
second
Navy.
lieutenant. Yeah. In the Army, it would be second lieutenant, then you move to first and then up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, cool. So, but at some point, I mean, now you're an ensign. You've come a long way already in a short period of time. You're probably feeling pretty good, but you still have something else on your radar to fly, because you told us that's been there since you were very young. Was that part of your motivation during this OCS part as well? Or was that just maybe someday?
No, I got to be honest with you. I was so hyper-focused on OCS that it wasn't until I got accepted to OCS where the light bulb went off. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, I can apply to flight school.
Yeah.
And so by the time I got to OCS, I was 100% laser focused on that. So that's another reason that I worked really hard and was super competitive with Catherine, was I really badly wanted to go to flight school. And there's a story about it if you want to hear it.
Heck yeah.
So I actually wrote about this. It's on my website. So at the time I was a mom, but I was not married. I had divorced dad, but I was in a stable relationship. And so my husband right now and I were together. So on paper, I was a divorced mother. There were 4 people who were selected for flight school out of my OCS class. All of them finished behind me in the class. I was the second. I finished second in my class behind Catherine.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Well deserved. But she didn't apply to flight school. So I was the number one. I was the most qualified. And I didn't get selected. I got sent to a group air station to work as a surface operations officer. I was one of 2 officers at the unit who were not pilots. But I was surrounded by pilots and got to watch helicopters doing auto rotations outside my window every day. And one day my office mate came in and said, saw the distress and sadness on my face. It was like, what's wrong? And I was like, well, all I wanted to do was go to flight school. And now I have to sit in this office and watch these helicopters doing auto rotations outside my window. And he's like, what? You wanted to go to flight school? Why didn't you say so? And he swept me up to the commanding officer's office. And the next thing you know, I have this recommendation, everybody loved, I was like the baby sister there. They were like, get this girl to flight school. So I had so much love and support immediately. It was like whiplash. And it was 3 months later, I got an acceptance, notification. I was going to flight school. My commanding officer was like, congratulations, Liz. We just need you to give us a year. And I was like, I'll give you a year. So I stayed there for a year. And interestingly, the Coast Guard is such a small service that the detailer, the aviation assignment officer, assigned himself to our unit. This was Port Angeles, Washington, and came, a couple months before I left for flight school. And I went up to him and I was like, can I have a meeting? And I sat down with him and I said, hey, I'm just curious why I didn't get selected for flight school out of OCS. And he completely unapologetically just gave it to me straight. He was like, listen, we had a few women drop out of flight school last year. You were a divorced mom with a dependent and you were high risk investment. And I was like, well, nobody called me to ask me what my support network was, and nobody took into consideration that I've just finished a 16-week program, away from my child, or that I was on a ship underway for 6 to 8 weeks at a time, and that going to Navy flight training where I'd be home every night was going to be a cakewalk in comparison. So that's how that went down. But I did get there eventually and with a lot of support. So, yeah.
Again, that's kind of like the recruiter story, where you just, somebody notices something about you, says, what's up? And next thing you know, you're going up to see your commanding officer about flight school. That's really interesting as well. It's chain of events, right place, right time, whatever you want to call it. And it ends up getting you started on another goal.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
it's another circumstance where I think you can speak to the desire to pursue your dreams in a different way, right? I think a lot of folks in law enforcement have a similar story where you want to get into aviation, but for whatever reason you weren't selected, and you had to spend more time doing whatever it was that you were doing. While it wasn't bad, it wasn't exactly what you wanted to do,
Yeah.
So that that time you spent in that position, I think ultimately probably made you want it more. Is my guess.
Maybe. Honestly, so I'll flip that and just put it out to people who sit on selection panels or people who are in supervisory positions who start making, because this happens today. You talk to, I just read another story about this in the book that we're reading for the book club this month, about, a woman who was kind of trucking along in her helicopter career in Australia, and she was up for the next opportunity to go move to the next job, and they didn't give it to her because she had a boyfriend. And she was like, wait, but my bags are packed. So like people make decisions for you because they haven't bothered to ask you what you're willing to change or sacrifice in your life. It's a patriarchal decision, of like, oh, we're going to take care of you and not ask you to do this hard thing without even asking you if you're set up to do it. So from my perspective, I told you 3 out of the 4 people who were selected out of the OCS class dropped out of flight school. So the Coast Guard wasted a lot of money on them because they were not as qualified as I was or as motivated as I was. And they wasted a whole lot of money on me sitting on my ass like for a year. I could have been doing something more specialized. Mm-hmm. But I do see your point in terms of like personal growth and, making the best of the situation. And I did. I made the best of it.
Yeah, because I think there's some folks who, when hitting a roadblock like that, they might be like, okay, I guess it's not meant to be. And they kind of give up on their dream, whereas that wasn't your story. Your story was, no, I'm going to continue to pursue this, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
What using that experience, Liz, now it's Liz world and you're in charge and you're as a leader and you have a lot of leadership experience. How would you handle that now? If you were in charge and they said, oh, selection process, we base it on this criteria. So how do you eliminate that problem? Is there a simple fix to that?
I was in charge. I ended up being a detailer. And the way you eliminate it is programs like DE&I, where you're asking broader questions about why people are not being selected, or why are people just various, like I'll bring it down to one simple example. The example of women or shorter people in aircraft that are designed for larger men. There are numerous examples. This is a theme of women who are struggling in their initial phase of flight training. This is particularly in fixed wing, with their landings and maybe their takeoffs. And why? Because their sight picture doesn't match the picture of the instructor that's in the aircraft with them, who isn't challenged with the same ergonomic challenges that they are. It's having the situational awareness to recognize that there is something different about us. You're small and I'm large. You come from a different cultural background than I do. I personally have bias and assume that men are going to take care of their childcare needs and I don't have to talk to them about it. But now there's a woman with a child and therefore it all must be on her and I'm going to protect her by not sending her to flight school. You know what I mean? Like it's seeing your biases, whatever they are. It doesn't have to be about race or gender or anything. It could be you're from Tennessee and I'm from Boston. And you talk funny. And we're both saying that on both sides, right?
Exactly. Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
There you go. You got it. Yeah.
Yeah. It just seems so simple that you just ask questions. I mean, you just say, hey. So in the interview, you're asking people in interviews all sorts of things. In policing, this is true. You're asking them all sorts of questions. And wouldn't one of them be, tell us about life right now?
Exactly.
And tell us, you're a single mom. Oh, yeah. Tell us about that. Yeah. It just seems so simple. You just dig a little deeper, no matter who it is in front of you, male, female, tall, short, it doesn't matter. You just learn as much as you can about that candidate. And then you go, okay, is that candidate qualified for this position?
Yeah.
Yes, they are. Is their life in a place where they could handle learning to fly? Based on our interview, the answer is yes. Okay, welcome to flight school. It just seems pretty obvious to me that you'd want to know more instead of just saying, well, single mom, that's tough. And it is. I think you'd be the first to say that probably had all sorts of challenges, but they're not challenges you couldn't overcome.
Yeah, but I mean, again, I was also I had a support network too.
That's
so
right.
Nobody
That's
asked
right.
me. Nobody
That's right.
to ask. So yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So you get to do the flight school. You get sent to flight school. Where that's in Pensacola?
So the Coast Guard goes to flight school with the Navy, and we start primary in Pensacola, and then we go through our primary fixed wing. I think we all go to Pensacola. I could be wrong about that. I know the Navy has fixed wing training also in Corpus, like primary fixed wing, but I can't remember. I think we all at least when I went to flight school, we all would go to Pensacola and Whiting Field. Yeah. And did the T-34 there. And you compete in the T-34, you do as well as you can, and then you request to either go fixed or rotary wing. And I requested to go rotary wing, and it was no big deal at the time. Interestingly, at the time, it was more competitive in the Coast Guard to go fixed wing because a lot of people were thinking long-term toward the airlines.
Oh, okay.
And that's what they wanted to do. It all changed after The Guardian came out. The movie, it did. In fact, I wish I brought this down here. In fact, when I was the detailer, this was right around that time, 2009, 2010. The Coast Guard liaison officer is an 06 down in Pensacola. And at the time, his name was Captain Pettit. And he had a patch made because the world had flipped on its head and everybody was competing to become rotary wing pilots. He had a patch made that said, Pettit's picks so others may hover. And it had all these fixed-wing planes on it. And it was like a joke. It was like a consolation prize to the guys who got picked for fixed wing. Anyway, I competed for rotary wing and had no problem getting it. And
that's funny. It's the Top Gun Maverick effect.
It is totally.
Hollywood, I'll tell you, Hollywood. We talked about it regularly with people. How Hollywood influences directions you take, jobs you go for, career paths. It just does. So that's interesting that The Guardian changed that. That's a big deal. I mean, that's a big flip.
Rumor has it that movie's made about Jason Quinn. Is that true? Quinny, we love you.
Shout out, Quinny. Oh, that's awesome. I actually have met a lot of rescue swimmers who were motivated by that movie. So it's good.
Wow.
Oh,
good stuff.
That's that is interesting. The Hollywood effect, boy. That's we come across that a lot. So once you got selected for rotor wing, now what does that entail? Give us a little bit of that overview.
Thank you to our sponsor, AEM. Their revolutionary MTP-136D P25 aerial firefighting radio is U.S. Forest Service approved. It's in stock and ready to ship. Grounded unexpectedly? No problem. AEM stocking dealers across North America are prepared to support all your mission-critical needs. Visit aem-corp.com/radio.
You just drive across the field over at Whiting and you go to the helicopter training squadrons, HTs. I was an HT-18 and you fly the Bell 206, the TH-57 helicopter, and you do all the things that you would do, auto rotations and all the the instrument and all the stuff. And then also some formation flying, which is the most fun thing you can ever do. And some nap of the earth, which was fun in flight school that I'm largely uncomfortable with otherwise. Keep me over the water and I'm fine. So
no wires over the water, no trees.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Funny stories.
So how did you like that Jet Ranger?
In
training?
it was fine. I mean, once you've flown the Dolphin, it's kind of like, it's fine.
but it's a great training platform.
Sure. Yeah, I don't have anything to compare it to. It's like,
oh, it's so stable.
I flew the TH-57, I flew the 65, and those are the only helicopters I've ever flown in my life. So I have nothing else to compare it to.
Yeah, it's a very stable, forgiving training platform. I trained a lot of people on that Jet Ranger, and it's just it's fun as an instructor. There was a lot of confidence that you could do things in that that maybe some other airframes you want to question it a little bit, and it could take a punch.
It's like the Cessna of rotary wingmen.
Yeah, it's very dependable. Just in auto rotations, especially. I mean, that thing just wants to stay in the air. You know.
Oh, that's why I was able to do it.
Yeah. Well, hey, you're welcome. I answer. You've been curious this whole time. How did I do that? That's it. It wants to fly. It's a great training platform. But any good instructor stories from your training?
So I had a great instructor. His name was Lieutenant McMillan. I don't remember his last name, but he was a good old boy. He was a tall dude. He took up most of the cockpit, and he chewed. He chewed, and so he always had a clear bottle of, like, you know, it was like an empty Dr. Pepper bottle or whatever, and he would spit in it. So there's like this brown juice sloshing. And I actually wrote a poem about learning to hover, and I include that bottle in it because it was so gross. But he was just the calmest dude. Like, I think we learned to hover on our fourth flight, and they put us over this, like, you know, square box pad. Yeah. And there were a bunch of them. There's a whole field full of them, and all these helicopters, like, doing whatever, trying to stay over these spots. And I just remember how, like, insane it was. Like, he would be in and hover, like we were sitting still, and then he'd hand the controls to me, and I'd be like, whoom, whoom, all over the place. And then he would just take it and, like, he would just be like, I have the controls. Boom. And then boom. And then, okay. Yeah. You have the controls. And then I'm like, whoa, there's Liz all over the place. So yeah, he was just super calm, had a great demeanor, and was a really, really great experience. And then the other great experience I had was during formation flying. I don't remember his name, and it's probably better anyway because I wouldn't want to say it. But, like, my stick, when you do formation flying, you get paired up with another student, and you go to your briefs together. And you have to brief before each flight, and a series of flights or whatever. And we were getting ready for a check ride, and we had studied together and everything. I don't know what was going on with that guy. We had studied together, but he couldn't pull it together during the brief. And so he got, like, told he was going to have to do it over. And so I ended up doing my check ride with two instructors in the other aircraft, and me with an instructor, and I think my instructor was a Coast Guard instructor. And I got to get the fun ride. I got to get the fun ride in formation flying. Like, I'm talking about nap of the earth. Like, at some point, somebody threw a chart out the window just to be funny. I mean, I got the hilarious, like, instructors like yucking it up, having their play day, and Liz Booker was along for the ride. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you're in the Jet Ranger, and do you get winged out of the Jet Ranger? I mean, when you finish that and complete it, you get winged, and
correct.
Then you go to more training, obviously, for the next airframe. Is that how it works?
Yeah. So you're now you're a nugget. Now you're a baby naval aviator with your gold wings, your brand new shiny gold wings. So I winged on Friday, and then in Pensacola, and then on Monday I reported to Mobile, Alabama, where the Coast Guard's Aviation Training Center is, to do my transition into the H-65 Dolphin. And that's where you learn, so you get basic how to fly a Dolphin. Oops, it's opposite from every other helicopter, right? Because the head turns the opposite way. And then you learn all of the button pushing with all the fancy navigation gear. And then you learn, like, the special operations of hoisting, hovering, or hoisting, you know, doing search patterns and that kind of thing. Flying with night vision goggles.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
Everything. How long's that?
That, I want to say, was 6 to 8 weeks. It was a transition course.
Wow.
Before you
That's
go.
a lot of stuff in 6 to 8 weeks.
It is. I mean, but it's just the basics. You're
Yeah.
not going to fly that aircraft as a fully qualified first
Right.
pilot for another year back at your unit. So
Okay.
you're getting trained enough so that you don't break anything when your aircraft commander is flying a staircase. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
What was the biggest challenge of flight training?
For me, probably learning that kind of studying.
Oh,
Flying,
interesting. Talk about that.
Stick and rudder all day long. Like that's kind of my groove. I can fly. Memorizing a bunch of numbers that don't mean anything to me. Words, yes. Concepts, yes. Strategies, yes. Procedures, yes. Numbers, man, that was hard.
Yeah.
For me, because they just don't mean anything to me. Like I guess my brain isn't designed, or I haven't developed it in a way that can have numbers mean something to me so that I can memorize them easily. So that's been really hard for me.
That's interesting.
Yeah. That's why
not the
those
normal answer.
little yellow and red lines are really great.
Thank goodness they put those there.
I know, right? Oops. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So hovering, you said 4 hours?
The fourth flight.
Fourth flight.
The fourth
Okay.
flight, I think, is when we learned how to hover. Yeah.
Okay. And so
I could be
before,
wrong.
how many hours approximately till you hover soloed?
Oh, well, I felt like, I mean, it's a funny thing learning to do things like that, isn't it? And it's something that I wrote about. Maybe we'll get to that later, but the proprioceptive learning curve, the idea of where your body parts are in space and time and what they're doing, and like being able to do something like ride a bicycle or hover a helicopter or kiteboard is another thing that I learned how to do. Like you can't remember, once you learn how to do it, you can't remember not knowing how to do it.
Yes.
Like you can't, isn't that
remember.
fascinating? It's on,
I kind of
What's
remember
that?
too, John.
But I can remember.
It was
Yes, I
scary,
feel
huh, John?
I do feel like even in that one flight, I was able to stay in the box,
Yeah.
you
I used to
know?
like you. I don't like you anymore.
Yeah. Boy, oh boy. She's cheating. Something's going
But-
on here.
I said able to stay in the box, but hovering like rock solid, that of course took
Sure.
many, many hours.
Of course.
And
of course.
hovering in dynamic conditions over a rocking boat at sea at night and holding that stable, that took a lot of time.
Yes.
to be able to do.
Yes. Well, that's a whole different world. Does it make you feel better now, John?
Yeah.
Landing on the back of a ship. Yeah.
Yeah. I needed a football field in the beginning.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
my
everybody does.
instructor just laughed and laughed. And
We
I'd
all
say,
start
oh my
somewhere.
gosh. Yeah, that's right. Everybody starts there. And
Yeah.
learning to hover's hard. But then did you find it that it was a light bulb that one day you pressed the hover button and you were able to hover?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was like a major epiphany like that. It just was it wasn't that hard in coming for me. I'll just say that. Like the stick and rudders were not as hard for me as the academics were. Yeah.
And I know people that I've trained. I wasn't like that. It took me a long time to get confident in hovering where I could solo hover, but I did train people that were like you, that just went boom and they got it. I'm like, how did they get it so quickly? And we talk about it, and they'd say, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, Jack. You told me to do this. I did it. It's like Forrest Gump, It's like, hey, why did you put that rifle together so quickly? Because you told me to. It's like, well, I had people like that. They just did it, and I was jealous. I thought, man, I worked for 20 hours doing what you just did in 3.
Well, I mean, I feel the same way about you clowns who can memorize everything.
I couldn't do that either. Oh my gosh, how did I become a pilot? A lot of people ask that.
You worked really hard. Sometimes it's work.
It was hard, but
Yeah.
I had one student that was a Navy pilot, and he flew A4s, and he said that learning to hover was harder than landing on an aircraft carrier to him.
Oh, of course it is.
And it was like,
Well, that's a given.
Wow. You know, that's
having
that's pretty
done
cool.
both, not landing on an aircraft carrier, but having landed a helicopter on the back of a moving ship. Of course, it's harder to learn to hover than to fly straight in at a giant runway on an aircraft carrier. I mean, that's obvious.
Maverick can't hover.
All the respect to our Navy jet pilots.
Is it? Right, John? Maverick
I
can't
wanted
hover.
to be one when I grew up, but I didn't make it. So I guess I'm spiteful. I'm jealous.
So now you go to Mobile. You're spending a lot of time in that part of the world, down in southern Alabama and Florida Panhandle, and now you're done with your initial H-65 transition.
Yes.
What happens next?
Then
Where do you go? What happens?
PCS, permanent change of station, and moved my whole family over to San Francisco, California, where I live on Moffett Field. And the air station is located on the east side of the peninsula at SFO, at the International Airport.
Oh, wow.
So I'm flying in and out of Bravo Airspace, in and around terrain and fog, under bridges, doing operations in a variety of environments, like cool ocean fog environments, and Sacramento River Valley, hot, and then Napa Valley, high density altitude operations. So an awesome place to be stationed as a brand new pilot.
You experienced a little bit of everything there.
The aircraft, it was really good.
Was that something you requested, or was that something that you were told, hey, you're going here?
Oh, I played a little game with my my dream sheet. I asked to go to San Francisco. The bottom line is, so I mean, and as the detailer, this is what I told people. I was reached out to by the detailer. I had put the places that I wanted to go. The detailer came back and said, we need you to put these 5 air stations on your dream sheet. And they kind of say it like, these are the only options there are. And I was like, you know what? I'm still going to put my top 4 that I want at the top, and then I'll put your 5 down here. And so I did that, and I ended up getting, I think I want to say San Francisco is my number 1 pick. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
And did you choose that or want that because of what you had heard about the variety, or was it something else?
I don't know why. I think my husband and I were like, it would be cool to live in California.
Yeah.
I think that's about all the thought that went into that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Understand that.
Yeah.
That's one of the places in the U.S. that, outside of living on a government facility, it's really challenging financially to be able to afford it, right? So
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Nobody warned me about that. I was really, oh my gosh. I mean, this is like off on a tangent, but when I got there, the BAH, the housing allowance, would not cover the cost of an apartment, like a tiny little box apartment. And so then they showed me the housing, the military housing that they were going to give me. And okay, I'm just going to say, like, I'm prior enlisted, so I know what it's like. And I earned my officer pay. So when they showed me the housing they were going to give me as a junior officer, and it was like a third of the size of what I had as an enlisted person, I was like, no, that will not do. But we couldn't figure out how to live on the economy. So we ended up living in the housing, and it was fine. We had wonderful neighbors, and we made the best of it. But it was a postage stamp. I didn't know that.
That's all you can do, huh?
Yeah, I didn't know that going in.
How long were you in San Francisco?
For 4 years.
Okay, that's a long 4 years then, but you learned a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great.
Do you look back at that 4 years and you're thankful that despite the housing, that you're thankful that you had that as your first 4?
Yeah, I mean, it was lots of positive things to say about it. Lots of interesting challenges the first year with the crew who was there, but they moved on, and we got fresh crew there, and it ended up being a really positive experience. I had my second child while I was there too, and that was actually a wonderful experience, thankfully. So yeah, and then I left there back up and ready to go for my second assignment in Miami. But I learned a lot. I deployed twice, so just to cover the full range, lots of search and rescue out there, mostly search and rescue, and deployed a couple of times. So my first solo flight was off the back of a cutter. So the H-65, and I say solo, so the H-65 Dolphin is a single piloted aircraft, day VMC only. So when you make first pilot, you are eligible to fly this aircraft single piloted, but you always are going to have a flight mechanic in the back. So you never really, I haven't been alone in a plane since I did my solo flights in flight school. So, so I flew my first solo. I deployed on my first deployment. It was the back of a 378-foot cutter off the coast of Central America, doing counter narcotics interdictions. And in order to ensure that our crew had the most flexibility, the first day that I was there, they sent me on a solo flight for my confidence builder, just in case they wanted to juice this air crew for as many hours as possible and rotate pilots during the day. So, yeah, it was exciting. I flew 45 miles away from the ship or whatever, and I was alone and with a flight mechanic, and I made it back. Here I am.
That's probably pretty stressful, I would think.
It was interesting. Yeah, I'm not going to pretend it didn't have me a little nervous, but I did it. So.
What was, do you have a memorable mission out of San Francisco Air Station?
Oh my
I'm sure
God.
you have many, but do you have one that you think of regularly?
Oh, I told you before we started that that I'm the person who, like, I never had a catastrophic engine failure. I never had like the hurricane. The cases that I remember are the things where funny things happened.
That's okay too. Those are great.
Like the guy,
we love that.
like the guy who stripped down naked and jumped off this is not like I don't know what was going on with this guy. I think he was drunk. So he wasn't trying to commit suicide. He just lost his damn mind. And he was jumping off of one of the bridges that goes across the bay, not like the San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge or anything like that. It's a low bridge. Yep. And he stripped down naked and jumped off the bridge. And I had to put my friend, rescue swimmer Gary Strebe, in the water. And he had to swim over to me like, he was like telling him, "You need to be cool, man." Like, and I'm hovering, and I'm like, I don't really want to look at this naked guy. Like, not the kind of guy you want to see naked. And so, those are the kind of stories that's good. I know. I just had the funny ones in my head all the time.
That's good. We like funny stories, and sometimes the ones that you remember are the funniest ones. And it's true in police work. It's true in the military. It's true in most professions, I think. You think of funny stuff that you got to experience. Yeah. You just laughed and, just shake your head in disbelief sometimes at the craziness.
I will say I did learn early on my own personal mantra or rule was to never look back. Yeah. When the guys were dealing with whatever they were dealing in the back of the aircraft, whatever nasty bodily fluids were going on back there, just in order for me to stay focused, I couldn't be dealing with the emotional end of that. And so I just kept my head forward. I asked them if they needed anything, got the information and related as I needed to, but focused on the flying. And
it reminds me of Cody's story. Cody Bogart, she talked about covering the patient up so she couldn't see anything, including their feet, and then going back to help clean up one time, and she made more of a mess than there was before because she
that was pretty funny. Yeah, she did not like that stuff.
Cody's my girl. Just so you know.
Jack, when you were in the field and you got a call involving a naked subject, what was your first thought?
Not again.
Yep.
Because it happens so often.
Oh, no.
PCP, right?
It just did. Because I came on in the PCP days, and PCP, one of the symptoms of that is you feel like you're burning up. So they were all naked. I mean, back in the 80s, PCP, I'll bet you 75% of them had little or no clothing on because of that. That's what it does to you physiologically. It makes you feel that way. So they would strip. And now you have to go in there, and they're all sweaty and nasty, and now you have to go in and put handcuffs on and fight them. And they had strength. I mean, so yeah, not again. That's it in a nutshell.
100%. As soon as that came out, you're like, oh boy, this is gonna be interesting. So obviously you'd rally up a decent number of folks, so you weren't going in there underhanded.
That's right. Get some rookies.
I always hated getting those calls.
Yeah, well, that's not a fun or funny scenario at all. That's yucky.
Ugh, it's awful.
Yeah, I'm sorry you guys had to deal with it. And
All the time.
I was sorry that Gary had to deal with it, but it was also funny. Like, and it was just him in the water, with this guy. Like, you be cool, man.
Yeah, that's right.
It's always funny in hindsight. Well, not always, but mostly it's funny in hindsight.
is.
Yeah.
Just not during the moment.
Yeah.
You started to talk about the H-65, but let me start by, we talked about this before we pressed record, and I asked Liz, I said, all these years that I've known about the H-65 and I've called it a Dolphin. And so I asked her, hey, it's spelled dolphin. And so let's start with that, Liz. Tell me what you told me about Dolphin and dolphin. Because there's people out there that are listening going, well, she said dolphin. I thought it was Dolphin. And there's people that will say the opposite. Explain.
Thanks to our sponsor, Summit Aviation, a full-service provider for business, government, parapublic, and military aviation, specializing in maintenance, modifications, avionics, interiors, and paint. Discover more at summit-aviation.com.
So the original aircraft was an Aerospatiale, a French aircraft, Dauphine, Dauphine. And the U.S., bought it, and I think it was originally American Eurocopter. I think now it's Airbus. Am I right about that? Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. And so the Coast Guard, when we brought it into the U.S. and we, put American engines on it, we made it the Coast Guard Dolphin. So when I started flying it in the late 90s, 1999, we were still sort of interchangeably calling it Dolphin. So I think now it's, obviously Dolphin in the Coast Guard, but
yeah,
you're okay.
Oh, thank goodness. I thought I was going crazy. There's a lot of that going on at this point in life. So to talk about the Dolphin, give us an overview of that airframe, and then add to that, your feelings about it, not just the technical stuff, but your feelings about it, about flying that. You did a lot of hours in that.
Okay, so first and foremost, it has been 16 years since or maybe 15 years, 16 years since I've actually touched the controls of one of those aircraft. So don't quiz me on stats, because you heard how I feel about numbers earlier.
Yeah, what are the limitations on that, Liz? We'd like the full limitations, please.
So it's an incredibly cool aircraft. They call it Tupperwolf jokingly because it's a carbon fiber, composite aircraft. And it doesn't have the legs of the 60 or the power of the 60. And it was always main gearbox limited. So we were always having to fly it very tenderly. But what a sexy little sports car of a plane. And it had all the bells and whistles for navigation and stuff that you could want, And so I loved it. I felt proud of my service for climbing into that thing and flying it out over the ocean. I liked that it was the bright orange, sort of international orange color that signaled to people in distress so that, they could see it. And it represented, what the good parts of the Coast Guard and what we do. So really fun to fly. It, required a gentle hand, a smooth hand. We'd have guys who flew the 60 come in and, kind of try and crank it around and often over torque it because they were getting rough with the collective or too aggressive with it. So I felt like I was well suited for it. It's also sort of a smaller aircraft, and I'm 5'4", so I felt like it fit me like a glove. And I also loved that in all of the aircraft that I flew in the military, now that I'm flying civilian aircraft, I appreciated that all of the parts of it were sort of adjustable. So the pedals were adjustable fore and aft, the seat up and down fore and aft, so I could get everything set ergonomically the way I needed to fly it the best that I could for my body. And then the big dude next to me could adjust it for him. So, its capabilities definitely were limited. And, one of the things we were always thinking about, especially if we had a search and rescue case that was close by, was how much fuel did we have on board with our crew of 4, the pilot, the co-pilot, the flight mechanic. Flight mechanic is a qualification position. The people who are serving as flight mechanics in the Coast Guard, as your listeners probably already know, are also our aircraft mechanics. They're either our, airframe and power plant or the electronics maintainers. And then we have that aviation survival technician in the back, the rescue swimmer. And so crew of 4 that we would just baseline at 800 pounds plus the fuel. And then who are we picking up? And are we going to have to dump fuel to pick them up because of our main gearbox limitations? So that was something that was always in the back of our mind. But aside from that, it was just a fun short range recovery helicopter. Our flights were, you had to work really hard to stretch it past 3 hours. You had to really milk the fuel to stretch it past 3 hours. So for me, in terms of bladder control, that was very suitable for me. I was usually wearing a dry suit, like we were all wearing dry suits anyway, so it didn't matter if you were male or female.
It's kind of like the podcast, John. Yeah, it's very similar. That's good. We like that you just said that 3 hour mark. Excellent.
I have a 3 hour bladder. Yeah, it's more like 2.5, boys. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, got it. Check. Synchronize your watch, John.
Exactly. So no, it was a really fun, and of course I'm proud of the Coast Guard's missions. Search and rescue, first and foremost. Just can't help it. Some of the law enforcement was more fun than others, but I was on board with all of it and believed in it and did my best. So it was just a really righteous experience.
What was it about the Dolphin that maybe you didn't care for, or that you not personally or just the aircraft itself, but was there something that you didn't like?
Yeah, it would be that main gearbox limitation.
Okay. Yeah.
You would always wish you could pick everybody up if you were in a situation where, or that you had a little bit longer legs,
Yeah.
And you don't know what you don't know when you're in the situation. But more recently, when I look at, we went over to the local field near my house where Coast Guard Air Station Miami will fly a helicopter over land. And I haven't been out to any of the units in many years. And they had the new night vision goggles. And I was like, whoa, I wish I had these, because I had the green ones, and I don't know what the number is now, but they're just like this beautiful crystal clear vision. And I was jealous of that. So I don't know what they have now that I wish I had. I just don't know what I don't know.
Well, we have a lot of listeners that aren't in aviation, and one thing I just wanted to point out is that you've all seen a Dolphin, a Coast Guard Dolphin, and like you said, the color, the bright orange.
Yeah.
But the other thing is the sound. The UE is the sound, but
sounds like the Jetsons.
Yes, in a distant second to the UE familiarization sound is that Dolphin. You can hear that coming. It's very unique. And everybody's heard it while they're sitting at the beach, on either coast. It's a very visible and unique aircraft.
And it's because of that 11 blade Finistron style tail rotor that makes that sound.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Yeah, I like it. You touched on the mission profiles for us. Was there a particular, what percentage would you say? I know every air station is probably different for this question, but in San Francisco, it was mostly search and rescue.
Yeah, for out of, okay. So it was mostly search and rescue until 9/11.
Okay.
And then I was actually up in the first Coast Guard aircraft that was up in the San Francisco Bay Area. I was up in it doing the very first port security patrol, flying, hovering around, hover taxiing around SFO at 50 feet, just looking for who knew what. It was like our first ever port security patrol. We didn't know what we were doing, but we were going to go fly around and make sure the airport was safe before they opened up air traffic. So and then once 9/11 happened, because I was at San Francisco from 1999 to 2003, so that was obviously 2001. So then a huge portion of our focus shifted to what could we do to patrol and protect critical infrastructure, a word that we hadn't used before. Identifying critical infrastructure, mapping it, and then going and patrolling it routinely. And then we had quotas. You have to go patrol the coast of the city this many times in a month, and that kind of thing. So our focus shifted significantly with that Homeland Security focus.
Well, many, many years ago, late 90s, I got to fly in a Coast Guard Dolphin one day with Molly Reardon.
Oh my
out of
gosh.
LA. Do you know Molly?
Okay, there's a whole story there.
Okay,
talking.
you're gonna tell it because Molly was the pilot, and I got to sit front left with Molly, and we went out and did some practice hoists with the lifeguards or something.
Yeah,
and
you were in Los
the reason
Angeles.
I was there, I was.
Yeah.
And the reason I was there was I was the chief TFO at the time, and we were constantly talking about communication.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody said, well, you know who the kings of communication are? It's pilot to hoist to rescue swimmer. Those three communicate, and you should go out and talk to them about it. And I did. And Molly says, well, let's go do it. And we went and did it. I remember it vividly, and it was so impressive. I came back and said, I don't know what they're doing to train their people how to talk, but man, we got to do some of that. Talk about before you tell your Molly story, talk about the communication and how important that is between you and your hoist operator, and the training involved in that, the Coast Guard philosophy.
Oh my gosh. I think you're like, I don't know, you kind of hit a little sweet spot for me because
Ooh,
I actually
good.
love, I really miss that kind of really coordinated, locked on communication that we did when we were doing our hoisting operations. When you had a flight mech who was in their groove and you're in your groove, it flowed really well. And then and honestly, like I got to give them credit and blame. Those flight mechanics are like the most important person in the crew when we're doing any hoisting operation. They have so much going on. They are trying to work and talk and assess distances and approach speeds. So basically what happens is you have this whole checklist to get yourself into a hover. And up until that point, I'm in charge or whatever. I'm flying the helicopter and I get it into the hover. And then at some point I say, flight mech, go on hot mic. And then the flight mech goes, I say, go on hot mic and con me in. And once the pilot does that, the flight mechanic is the one who is having to manage the hoist cable with a human being on the end of it, typically with the rescue swimmer on the end of it, sometimes a basket. Mm-hmm. Lower that human being down, make sure that I'm not screwing up the hover or moving too fast toward the target, making sure that person is going down at the right speed, the right pace to arrive at the point where they can get on deck on the target that's moving in the water, by the way.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, there's so much. So they just have a standardized set of commands. They forward and right 50, forward and right 40. I can't easy, like there's an easy forward and right, or you're low, you're high. They have all of these catchwords, and the whole time, like I'm trying to respond to them verbally and do what they ask me to do. But there's a point at which I can't see the target anymore.
Right.
I am completely, especially when we're directly over and you've got a human being, hooked up to that cable, and the deck below you is moving around in the seas. And yeah, it's challenging and really rewarding when it goes well. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The words were so important.
Yeah.
I mean, there's words. What I'm trying to say is that person in the back on that hoist, there are certain things that they say the same way to you every time. I mean,
Correct.
identically. There's no
Correct.
Winging it and how this is my style. No.
Yeah.
These are the words.
Yep.
Now, you can say it in your voice, and you might add inflection depending on what's going on, but these are the words. Is that accurate?
Absolutely accurate. And what that means is, and this was the great example of this was Katrina response in New Orleans. Crews came from all over the country, were thrown into aircraft together. Most of them had never flown together, did not matter. The training was so standardized, it didn't matter who you ended up with in the back or who you had in the front. I mean, obviously, when you fly with people for longer, you get to know them better and things get even better. But just that introductory like flight with somebody you've never flown with before, if we're all trained to that standard, we all know we all have that common language. We all have that common understanding of what's going to happen when I say this. It just works like an absolute orchestra.
Yeah.
The way it's supposed to. And yeah, that is something that the Coast Guard does extremely well.
I was very impressed. And
Very
I
high
brought a lot
standard.
of things back to our unit about that. And it was very helpful. And I'll tell you, it's hard to remember what I had for lunch yesterday, but I remember this is probably 1998 or 99. And I remember Molly Reardon. Now, I mean, that just shows you how that impacted me. I remember her name.
Yep.
She was wonderful to me that day. She was outstanding on the stick. And I just was impressed. So Molly's story, go ahead, Liz.
No, I mean, so I'm at my first unit in San Francisco. I'm a female junior officer. There are three other women at the unit, but none of them have children. I have a child already, but I want to have another one. And I'm trying to plan like my career. So I'm going to my bosses and I'm like, I want to have a baby. How do I figure this out? They're like, oh, why are you talking to me about that? You know, a bunch of guys are like, oh, am I even allowed to talk about that? You know? And so every one of them says to me, you know, you need to call Molly Reardon. Molly Reardon, she's an ops boss down in L.A. or she's a commander. I think she was the XO at the time. She's down in L.A. She's a commander. She's had 3 kids. You should call Molly. Call Molly. And I'm like, I am not cold calling an 05 and ask her for family planning advice. And it was because and I tell that story all the time because I never did call Molly Reardon. But later, I decided that this was dumb and that I was not the only person who had ever had children in the Coast Guard. And so I reached out to all the women, including Molly, and asked them to share their stories so that we could give it to the women coming behind us, because I just thought it was dumb that I had nobody to talk to.
That's interesting.
Call Molly.
So you never met Molly?
I met her years later when I was the ops boss in Los Angeles.
Okay.
I finally met her very briefly.
Okay, good. Well, if you ever talk to her, you can tell her that I remembered her from many years ago, and I don't remember things like that as well as I should.
I'm going to try and track her down now.
Well, she made an impact on me.
That's awesome.
And her crew. It wasn't just her, you know. I mean, I'm not just talking about Molly. I'm just talking about how impressed I was with the 3 of them and the coordination and the communication and the confidence and everything, where I just left there and went, I didn't see that coming, you know?
It's the training.
That's really impressive.
Yep. It's good, solid.
You worked San Francisco, you worked Miami, LA stations. Did you have a favorite station? Air station?
I enjoyed all of them for different reasons.
Yeah.
Here in Miami, which is where I ended up retiring outside of Miami, Fort Lauderdale area. What I loved here, you know, I was a second tour pilot. I was an aircraft commander now, so I was off on my own, and we deployed a lot. So I was out at sea, and I was deployed also operating out of land, forward operating positions out of land like Great Inagua, and also Guantanamo Bay. And so I had a lot of autonomy, and I was as proficient as I ever could possibly be at ship landings. And I love that kind of stuff. I love hovering, hoisting, and landing on ships. Like those are my favorite things to do in the helicopter.
Yeah.
But flying around was fine, but those were the things. That's what makes a helicopter cool. So I was really good at it, and I enjoyed those aspects of being here. Yeah. So, and then in Los Angeles, it was a different experience being the operations officer there, because I was making operational risk management decisions for launching my cruise. And so, you know, I was getting the call for the search and rescue case at night and asking the questions, and then, you know, making a determination. And typically, like, there's a lot of helicopter stuff in Los Angeles, as you know.
Yes. Yeah.
A lot of helicopter services. So if they're calling the Coast Guard, it's probably because most other people don't want to go.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
A lot of stuff out at Catalina Island.
Oh, yeah.
You know, low weather. Nobody else wants to go. Okay. How bad is the patient? Do they really need to go now? Or, you know, did they stub their toe and can they wait till morning, kind of thing? So, yeah.
Yeah. Which leads into the next question. Let's talk about risk management and in the Coast Guard. Can you give us an overview or a philosophy or the steps, however you want to word it? Give us the Coast Guard risk management like you just talked about it as an operations officer, you're involved in that, but the pilot's involved with it, the crew's involved with it. Can you just talk about risk management overall with the Coast Guard?
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Hangar Z podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors. Cheers. Thank you to our sponsor, AEM. Their revolutionary MTP-136D P25 aerial firefighting radio is U.S. Forest Service approved. It's in stock and ready to ship. Grounded unexpectedly? No problem. AEM stocking dealers across North America are prepared to support all your mission critical needs. Visit aem-corp.com/radio.
Thanks to our sponsor, Summit Aviation, a full-service provider for business, government, parapublic, and military aviation, specializing in maintenance, modifications, avionics, interiors, and paint. Discover more at summit-aviation.com. Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability, so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
Thank you for joining us on the Hangar Z podcast. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Liz Booker, the Literary Aviatrix. What an inspiring life story, one filled with determination, perseverance, and purpose. From dropping out of high school to retiring as a Coast Guard commander, Liz has shown what's possible through hard work and passion. Now she continues to inspire others through the Literary Aviatrix, connecting the aviation and literary worlds while sharing her top book recommendations with a growing global community. A special thank you to my friend Captain Kim for connecting us with Liz. And of course, thank you to all our listeners and our sponsors for joining us. Stay safe, and we'll catch you the next time on the Hangar Z podcast.